Hello there, my name is Rox the Malice, and I'm here to show off my first ever deck profile and video. Don't please excuse me for the long pauses, I'm a little nervous. This is mostly a in-progress deck build. This is my third rendition of the deck, but I hope this helps you a lot when you're new deck. The deck I'm showing off is a Mystic Knight deck profile based around Flaming Red Prison of Blood Sync. It is mostly around budget, however the price of Sync has doubled up, so it's not as budget. Plus, there are cards here that you may have, but you want to get for later. Some other bigger options. We're just gonna try this for now. So to explain the deck profile, we have a few things. First, start with the monster lineup. It has about 18 monsters, and well, let's go for this. First, we have 4 copies of the Buddy, Flaming Red Prison of Blood Sync. He's cost to pay 2 gauge, top it 2 into Soul. When you cast a fire spell, which is most of the spells in our deck, for this turn, all Mystic Knights on your field get +3/+3. Basically helps with starting carrying offense and defense, but since this is more of a burn deck, it mostly to help secure your walling and small aggro plays. Its second ability lets you call this card on top of another Mystic Knights monster if it has 9,000 or more power without paying the call cost. This actually gets by Time Rollers really well, because with Time Rollers, they target your Sync or any other card, and then you can instantly just countercall this by having a spell cast on your opponent's turn. With that, then, you basically whip the target, so this is also good against the Time Roller matchup. Then, during each player's attack phase, this is why I love this card, when you cast a fire spell, you gain 1 life and deal damage. So, as long as it's in the attack phase, you are going to burn your opponent to life. There are tons of spells that let you burn during your opponent's attack phase and gain you life. It has Soul Guard and counterattack, so this is recommended to be in the center. Why this guy is so good is because you can just keep stacking 2 of them, and he'll just keep burning for days. And his defense potential by stacking spells can stack, so any monsters called after him will gain the +3/+3 also. And, well, basically, he's nice because he's much more of a defensive card than the other Syncs. He's much more towards burn and control with a lot of the Night spells. But I like it more the same because he reminds me of an old card, one of my favorite decks back in the Triple D era, which was Lone Remote. So, we have the main monster. Let's show off all of the support. We have Magic Base's Asagi at 4. She is the Garcat clone. Basically, when you enter the field, set for Mystic Knights, gauge 1, draw 1. Also nice, she has the Fire Mystic Knights attribute. Fire is also a big thing in the deck. You have to make sure you have 5 different more fires in the drop zone for specific effects. But it's easy to fill because this deck goes through half the deck in like 1 turn. Next is Blue Rose of Fluttering Sorrow Asagi. I said Blue Rose of Blue Rose. I'm tired. You put it on top of a Mystic Knights, which means you need to have a monster on your field, and then you pay 1 gauge. You can do the same counteract calling as Sync, so it can get past Time Roller, but you have had to cast a fire spell. It's basically the same conditions as Sync, but in a slightly different fashion. When this card attacks, if its power is 9,000 or more greater, which means you have to have cast a fire spell this turn via Sync, she becomes a DEL, so gauge, life, draw. She has Soul Guard because she's going to be able to put on top of a Mystic Knights monster. So like maybe Asagi, or having to call over Sync to stop him from being Time Ruled. And she has Move, just because like if you need to reset your board a bit, like you call over Asagi but want to Sync back in the center, like that. She's always nice. You always want more resources. You always want her on the field along with Sync to just keep ramping resources up as much as possible. Next we have Magic Manipulator Knight at 4. He is basically protection. All your Mystic Knights on your field cannot be destroyed, and their abilities cannot be nullified. So that's great. We have basically destruction protection and ability nullification protection, which is always nice to have on any deck. Then at the start of your attack phase, if this card's power is 6,000 or greater, which is just 1 spell, all Mystic Knights on your field get critical +1. That's why we don't run the second Sync, because it's out of our budget range. And also because with this, we always want to focus on the burn and defense aspect. We're going to keep burning our opponent. We're going to keep whittling him down little by little. So we need to have protection, and this helps us have some more pressure on board while also having defense on board. Always nice to have. Right here is supposed to be Magic Keyboard of Shion, but I recommend, let me go look him up, because this is actually my 3rd build, and I can't find it because I'm professional. Magic Guitarist Hisui. When this card attacks, drop the top card of your deck. If the drop card is a fire, you put it into the hand and deal 1 damage. Again, this is a burn deck. We always like burning your opponent. We like drawing, so we have that. The fire is basically either monster, spell, or item, and since this card is about 58 cards, including Flag and Buddy, that's 56. 56 cards out of the deck, we have basically a 56 out of 56, and we have about these cards, and these cards, so about For the deck really is non-fire. If you have the max build that you want, if you don't, that's an 8 build. That's an 8 out of 56. That's about 48 out of 56. That's about still an 80% chance of drawing off him. That's still really nice to have. Always recommended for burn damage, card potential, and a thing. I put Shion originally here because you can put him here, but because it combos with Asaki to gain another gauge life and draw from her. But it's not really that important that you can just get a draw and burn off of him. Next, we have 3 copies of the item. This is Magic Twin Nekitar Kinari. This is the lifeblood of your deck. You need this equipped at all times. God help you. The call cost is put up to 2 fire in total from your drop zone into its soul and pay 1 gauge. This is pretty hard in the beginning, but you always can play it afterwards once you get your deck going. This card can attack even if you have Mystic Knight in your center, so behind sync. All Mystic Knights in your field cannot be returned to hand, and their souls cannot be dropped. So it gives you bounce protection and soul drop protection. We still are not good against rest, but that's not. But the thing is, this is not a burn. This is more of a burn deck than an aggro deck, so we're all fine. We have another option to fix against rest spells anyway. And its third ability is, if you call Mystic Knights from your hand, or just from anywhere really, the gauge cost is reduced by 1. So Sync's 2 gauge is reduced to 1, Asaki just becomes the free call, basically simple like that. Saves you gauge in the long run, and makes everything much more easier for gauge management. I would say I wanted to keep it at 4, but since we actually have the next card that does that, it's kept it 3. And that is the item of the deck. Now on for spells, which is a... oh boy, they're a trip. First 4, we have Droplet of Temptation. It's a fired wizardry. Pay 1 gauge, pay 1 life. You put up to 1 sync from your deck into your hand, and 1 wizard Mystic Knight item into your hand. Run 4, your item's important. Your syncs are important. They are your life makers. Just run 4. Your life will save me later. 4 copies of Last Song. You only cast a spell if you have 2 or more Mystic Knight monsters on your field and a Mystic Knight monster equip. So pretty much, if you have your setup opening turn, this card goes live, or once you get live into the game, you get live. Gauge 2, life 2, draw 2. It's really nice, free advantage. You just need 4 field present, which the deck can easily make when you set up well. If you set up bad, that's the other draw spell's job. But when you set up well, Last Song's just gonna nice. 3 copies of Nightmare Cage. It is our anti-phase ender, which only a few decks have. It's also a counter spell, so it works on your sync turn, so you can cast this as soon as they activate the phase ender. Activate Nightmare Cage immediately to respond to that. Then on the Mystic Knights, gain a burn off of sync. See, we're always going to try to burn off sync. That's one of our main goals. And we're going to just try to keep focusing the pressure on the opponent. Actually, I should still talk about the effect. Nightmare Cage is pay 1 gauge and pay 1 life to counterstand all Mystic Knights on field, including item. Then for this turn, all Mystic Knights in your field can attack during the final phase. Suck it, phase enders. Suck it, time ruler. We can phase end, just attack you for the final phase for again and again and again and again and again. Fun, I know. Next is 4 copies of Wings of Revolt. You can draw a card, then choose one of the following 2. It's also a fire, so it procs Sync's burn. God help me. For the first ability on your turn, it gets power plus 6,000. This was originally just for the original sync because it needed 12,000 or more, which would need you to have cast 2 spells. But since now all syncs that just need you to cast 1 spell, it's just a really good booster. But it also has a counter ability, which procs Sync's burn, to give your monsters all Mystic Knights on your field defense plus 6,000. Remember, basic rules, Kinari cannot gain defense because it did not have printed defense to begin with. But it makes your syncs basically go from a 9/9 instantly cast to a 9/15, which is still pretty good defense, even all considered. Even with counterattack, it's still gonna do anything more. Plus, if you get another Mystic Knight spell casted, it will stack, so just press 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 6 is nice. Alright, we have Selector of Sin as 3 of. I'm looking at maybe putting it as a 4 of, but that's up to your discretion. You only cast it if you have a Mystic Knights on your field. You counter put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge, and then you give a Mystic Knights plus 3 plus 3. Then, if your drop zone has 3 or more different fire, which includes monster, spell, or items, you can put up to 1 fire spell from your drop zone other than Selector of Sin into your hand. Because, again, obviously hand loops. God, this would be great. Alright, so counter spell, proc Sync's burn, gives you gauge, gives all your monsters plus 3 when sync isn't around, gives you plus 6 when sync's around. Recalculates any spells you want. It's just amazing. You can counter onto this, bring another spell back, then can cast that spell again, and just deal much more damage. Remember, we're always thinking about at least 1 on field, but having 2 on field with sync is just... you just deal so much advantage. I highly recommend this card in the deck. Next, for 1-ofs, we have Flame Quartet, and Revolution of Red. Basically, they're cured to basically fill up the quota, really. Because you need as many different fires in your drop zone as possible. These guys are good as one-ofs just to have, just to play once, or just use as charge fodder. Flame Quartet lets you gain 2 gauge and 2 life by casting it once per turn. Then, at the beginning of your main phase, if the card's in the drop zone, you can just put it back to hand by discarding a card. If you need always a Mystic Knights on hand, always need a spell on hand, which the deck engine is really good on this deck. You don't need this as much anymore because we have Last Song to gain you life and gauge and stuff along with Asagi. Well, the new Asagi. And so this card really doesn't have that much benefit anymore back in the day. It's good to just have if you've got a dead hand and you really need a fire to push everything back again. Revolution of Red, the same thing. It basically is a little bit harder because you have to have different fires in your drop zone. But since like 48 cards out of this deck is, well, fire, you're not going to have trouble with that. So you destroy 2 cards of the field at a counter speed, which is nice because, again, proc sync. But however, since everything has destruction nullification, it might not come off as obvious as it would be. So that's why I run it at 1 to your discretion. Next, we have 2 copies of Gate of Transmigration. Same weird effect as Revolution of Red, where they need to have 5 basically different fires in drop zone to reduce it to an actual human call cost. You either return up to 2 cards in your hand or rest up to 2 cards in your entire hand. This is really good because we used to run Telecare in the original builds because that was a rest spell, but now we don't. But now this actually is a counter speed proc sync, and it also counter rests, which not a lot of decks still have protection for that, but so it's really nice to have. The return might come up once in one trial, but most of the rest protection is there. For one of them testing, which I'm bumping to 2 now, is Lunatic Circus. You pay 1 life to choose one of the following 2. You either, at your turn, put up to 2 Mystic Knights monsters or items with different card names from your drop zone into your hand, so that's so it's recycling, or counter call size 1 from your hand or drop zone by paying its call cost. This also works in tandem with our good old Kinari, since this doesn't actually specify where you have to call the card, it just specifies if you call one in general, it's reduced by 1 gauge. So you can call back a monster like Sync, and basically, if there's another Sync on board, that's 1 damage. Remember, you can't call Lunatic Circus on a Sync to call another Sync to the side of it, and those deal 2 damage. It counts the original Sync on board as that. So when you cast it, it counts the number of Syncs on board for that burn damage. That's a small note to have. Also, it's counter speed, so yes. 4 copies of our Shield, Deep Blaze Singularity. It nullifies the attack for paying 1 gauge, so counter speed, burn again. But if you have a Mystic Knight on your field, all the cards on their field get power up minus 3,000, but you also get +3/+3, so it's basically a -6 in a sense to your opponent, while you get a +3. Really nice to have. The nullifiers are still around somewhat, but not as much. It's mostly just reduced and nullified or bounced. You can't be rested, but it's still nice to have just in a while. 4 generic spells that kind of clog up the deck. We have 2 copies of Abracadabra. Once your deck gets really going, you have a good amount of gauge coming up. However, the issue is, so you need to have Abracadabra on standby just so your opponent can't play the game. Nice to have it too. And this is the part where I always find a little controversial. In my build, I run 4 copies of Nice One. If you have access to the Mystic Knight spell Flame of Memories, I highly recommend it. It's way better for the engine and way better overall for your deck's win con. However, the issue with that is this card's $10. This card's $2. Again, this is more of a budget Mystic Knight burn deck, so we're focusing on the budget than the actual best thing. If you would like to spend the same price you paid for your deck on 4 cards, congratulations, take this. You're gonna have a great time. It's gonna work with your sync to give you more power, give you more draw resources, fill up your drop zone even more, and it has the fire attribute, so it counts as a fire in drop zone. It's really good. However, again, expenses. This is budget. Last time I checked, the Yuga and Garga Nice One is like $2. Plus, yeah, they both don't actually require to have a Mystic Knight on field, so they're always good first turn plays. So for budget, you go Nice One. If you have the money and you just want to build this thing to like a beast, Flames of Memories. And for our last 2 cards, we have Holy Magic, because if we go through half our drop zone, we should just probably put some of it back so we don't deck out. Oh my god, that was really long. So I want to thank you guys for going through my Mystic Knight deck profile. If you would like to see more, just let me know. I will let you know anything I have about the deck profile. If I sound too boring, please let me know. And I thank you very much for coming. This was my first video in a long time since I think high school, so hope you guys like it. if you guys like me to make more of these like in-depth, more analysis style on each card and like combinations and stuff, please let me know. If anyways, I'm Roxas Malice, and I hope you have a nice day. Also, I'm not leaving a TCG Buzz link or anything. I'm not leaving any of those links. I'm just gonna leave the deck profile here. Have a nice day.